Welcome to Living from the Inside Out with Holly Wade. Living from the Inside Out is about living fully, guided from your inside. Holly shares the wisdom of how your mind, body, and spirit are truly connected and that you deep down know your own answers. Holly and her guests will provide tips, practices, and inspirational stories to help you approach your life from your own heart. And here's Holly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Living from the Inside Out. I'm your host, Holly Wade with Holly Wade Wellness. Thanks so much for joining today. I often get the question of what's the difference between fitness and health and wellness? These words are all kind of used interchangeably, but are they really the same thing? In my 25 years as a fitness professional, and then moving in more into the realm of wellness, I would argue that they are not. They are related, but they are not the same thing. So let's just start with talking about health. What is that? Well, by textbook definition and dictionary definition, health is the state of being free from illness or injury. Another definition is that it's a person's mental or physical condition. So if you think about that, that's dependent on numbers in your body. So things like blood pressure, cholesterol, your pH levels, your white or red blood cell count. It's looking for a norm. And if you're within that norm, you're considered healthy. If you're outside of that norm, you are considered ill, right? So we're in a state of health or illness. Well, for someone like me who has a chronic condition, based on that definition, I'm never really healthy. Now, the World Health Organization has expanded its definition to say a state of complete mental, and social well-being. Okay, well, again, I don't have complete physical health, physical well-being. Right now I'm in remission, but does that mean that I'm healthy? Because I really have a disease. So, what I used to argue with my students, or what I used to say to my college students when I lectured on this, is that we can have a disease. And by those definitions, we're not considered healthy ever. But I guarantee that you know someone with a chronic condition who really does live vibrantly, who lives with this energy and enthusiasm and purpose. And their attitude is way better than some people who have that physical health. Now that is the epitome of wellness, if you ask me. Components of this bigger picture of something called wellness or well-being, again, by textbook, include things like physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, environmental, occupational, and financial. Those are all the components. So physical is how's your physical body. Emotional. Do you have emotional intelligence? Are you an emotional stuffer? Or do you know how to express your emotions in a healthy way? Are you mentally stable or balanced? Or do you need some help with that? Intellectually, what are you doing to stimulate your mind so that you're learning and growing and thinking? Because that helps to expand our brain, that keeps it healthy. What about your social life? Now, I'm not talking about, sometimes there's this idea that introverts, because they don't necessarily need that socialization. They need quiet and alone. That maybe that's not healthy. Well, there's a difference between being an introvert and just tuning back in, giving yourself just that space to recover after being around people, from isolating yourself from people. There's a difference. When you isolate, that's not healthy. when you just go into a space of recovering so that you have energy to be around people again, that's healthy. You understand what you need. Social life. I was talking about that one. But we need social. We need relationships. Relationships are what allow us to grow. That's what allows us to see things in ourselves. There was some research conducted, and you may have seen this video going around on social media. This man allowed himself to be completely alone for a week. And in that amount of time, he became depressed. So that social interaction, that connection, that engagement, you hear me use the word connection a lot because we need it. We need that as human living beings. Spiritual. We are spiritual beings living in a body. We need to tend to our souls. Now, I'm not talking religion, but I am talking about having some kind of a relationship with that higher power, that higher being, that thing greater than you. So whatever your practices are, for some people that's spending time in nature. That's one for me. For some people it is church. For some people it's meditation time. For some people it's prayer time. For some people it's all of the above. But whatever it is, make sure that you create these continual practices to tend to that deeper space in you. Environmental wellness. I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. Thanks, Irene. Environmental wellness. That is, how do we impact our environment, and how does our environment impact our health? And yes, that is talking about chemicals and pesticides and herbicides. That's talking about the plastic that's going into our ocean. That's talking about plastic bags that are going out into fields and livestock eats it. There are a lot of things that we're doing to our environment that is not creating health for living beings in general. And we need to pay attention to that one. Occupational. Are you satisfied with your job? I read an article today, and one of the 5 things that creates inflammation in your body is being unsatisfied with your work, with your occupation. It is not worth being stressed out because you spend more time at your workplace than you do with your family or your loved ones, the people you choose. You might as well find a workplace that you enjoy. And then one that sometimes is on a wellness wheel or you might see listed in wellness and sometimes not, but I think it is a big component to wellness personally, is your financial well-being. What is your relationship with money? So that is wellness. And when you look at all of those components, where do you sit within those? And a lot of them interlap or interrelate. You can even simplify it to mind, body, spirit, finances, or mind, body, spirit, life. You can simplify it in that way. But those things are all a part of what we need in our lives in order to create a vibrant life, to have energy, to feel fulfilled. We need to tend to all of those parts of us. Now, the thing that I'm not a fan of is I don't think that we can compartmentalize our experiences or who we are from one thing to another. Regardless, whatever is happening in our home life is going to impact us at work. And whatever's happening at our work life is going to impact us at home. It takes a really special person to be able to differentiate and divide and leave work at work and home at home. It's not an easy thing to do. So I'm more of are you a well-rounded person? What in you needs attention? That's kind of how I approach things. Because we're not going to be able to do all those every single day, right? There isn't enough time in the day. But you can tend to parts of yourself. And what do you need to tend to at the moment? Now, fitness, see, this is where things get kind of confusing. Fitness and wellness versus health. Fitness is really about a desired outcome. It involves the components of fitness, which are muscular endurance, muscular strength, cardiovascular, flexibility, and body composition. Those are the outcomes that we're looking for in fitness. So we will do those things, and we're always going to measure, and we're creating a linear result to a body that's not linear. And it's usually about getting six-pack abs or weight loss or those things. And I would argue that those things don't necessarily create health. What we're selling with fitness, and the reason I kind of have de-emphasized myself in that world, is because it's based on an unrealistic outcome. You know, we see all these pictures of these fitness models, and they are models. They are people who work out in the gym hours a day. They're really an athlete. But we're being fed these pictures that that's what we're supposed to look like. Now, all those things work in creating health. This is where the relationship really is helpful. We need to work our heart and lungs. That's the cardiovascular. We need to strengthen our musculoskeletal. That'll help us to avoid osteoporosis. That'll help us to be independent in our home for longer as we age. We need to work on flexibility. That's how we avoid injury. We also need to work on balance in order to prevent injury. Body composition, that can determine health. But we don't need to be so low that we're at 3 to 5% body fat. That's not healthy. That's essential. That's not healthy. Or for ladies, down to 13%. That's essential. That's not healthy. We need fat. And that's where fitness has created, I think, this dysfunction. And it's become this multi-billion-dollar industry that feeds and fuels something that can lead to unhealthy behaviors. And the way that we do this is through a linear action, like I said before, and it's about frequency, intensity, time, and type. We are creating stress on the body or demands on the body, and the body will rise up to meet those demands. Now, you have to do it at a calculated state, because if you do it too fast, you'll end up injured. And we don't want that, because then you backslide. So there's the strategy behind how often to add one of those elements to challenge your body even more. And that's what we do in personal training or as exercise scientists. Those are really the differences between fitness, health, and wellness. And where I like to land is in the world of wellness. To me, that's what makes the most sense. How are you creating wellness? What is your relationship with your body? What is your relationship with food? How are you tending to it? Do you understand your emotions? Are you afraid to feel them? Do you know how your mind-body connection works? And do you know how you can change that to create health and vibrancy in your own life? Because for me, the thing about wellness is that we are always in the realm of being empowered to create health. When we have the tools, we can always create health. How are you taking care of your environment? Not just from a physical standpoint, but what is your environment when you walk into your home? Is it cluttered? Is it a place where you can breathe and let down? Is it stressful to come back to? That's going to require some changes, right? What's your social life? We need relationships. I said that earlier. What about your spiritual? What about your occupational? What about your financial? See, when we understand our relationship within all of those things, we understand maybe where we have some growing space. We understand maybe where we need to get some help. Like, I will admit, I can really benefit from some financial counseling to help me to understand how to grow my finances and allow them to work for me. I've worked through the others. I've built, I think, some really solid skills around being healthy and being well overall. And you can too, but it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that happens over time. And what's funny is that as you start to develop skills in one area, one of those areas, you'll see these skills develop in other areas too, because they are interrelated. It's kind of cool how that all works. You might start with fitness just to work on your physical well-being. Maybe you need to do some cardio. Maybe it's not about the image, but maybe it really is about getting some numbers so that you can create health. Maybe it is about getting some cholesterol numbers normalized, or maybe you have high blood pressure and you can bring it down, or maybe you're leaning toward diabetes and you know that by modifying your diet and exercise habits, by creating some skills around that, you can create your health. That's how they interrelate. It's in that physical component of wellness. But health and fitness really just kind of tend to stay there. Now, when fitness opened up to yoga and Pilates and more mind-body, then we started to tap into the emotional component and how that interrelates. Because we already understand that one of the things that can be a de-stressor is exercise, movement. It creates those feel-good chemicals in the brain, the endorphins. And as we exercise, it gets that angst, that pent-up emotion. It gives it a place to go because emotion is energy in motion. It gets it out of our bodies. We need to pay attention to that. Sometimes people will cry on their yoga mat because they have held things so deep in them, and we go into sometimes some very deep poses that will open things up, and they'll start crying and not even know why, or their tears or their eyes will well up with tears and they won't even know why. That's why, because it's all interconnected. When we feel lonely, it impacts our emotional well-being. It impacts how our body feels, because our body will start to ache because the inside of us is aching for some connection. If we aren't intellectually stimulated, we actually kind of stagnate. We get bored. And so that intellectual stimulation, whether that's reading, whether that's taking a class or a workshop, or finding a hobby, learning something new, that's really good for our mind. It's really engaging for our brain. Two of the biggest stressors that we can have, well, three, because social is our relationships. And if those are stressful, it's going to show up in our body. Our work, if it's stressful, it's going to show up in our body. And that can then impact our relationships when we go home. Or if we're already lonely, it can feed that depression even more, or that isolation. Finances are the third one. So relationships, our work, and our finances are the top stressors in our lives. And see how it all kind of interweaves? And that as you tend to one area, it can relieve pressure in other areas. So where in your life do you need to create wellness? Where do you need to create health? Where do you need to start? Is it fitness? Is it doing some things to tend to your physical body through moving your body? Is it through nutrition? Is it through sleep? Or do you need to tend to yourself from that mind-body connection? Or do you need to create financial well-being to alleviate pressure in your relationship, in your marriage? To take pressure off of your parents or to take pressure off of whoever else? What is it that you need to spend the most time on and with? Once you've identified that, contact me. Holly Wade Wellness, or find me on Facebook, because my Blissed Body program is a 4-week program to help you create habits around your body. And we need to get to that root of what's creating that stress. And even though financial may seem like it's far off from your body, it's not. And when we can pinpoint that, then we can work on some skills to grow whatever it is. So we're going to look at that area that's giving you the most stress and start to build skills to fill that gap so that you can create vibrancy and health for the long term. If that's what you need, give me a call. Find me on Facebook, email me, Holly at Holly Wade Wellness. Message me on Facebook. Let's get you on a 30-minute call and let's talk through it and see how we might be able to work together. Because while fitness, health, and wellness are not the same, they do interrelate. And we want to work with those and use those tools in order to create that vibrancy. Because your life deserves that. Being a warrior for your health and your life is that important. Thanks for joining this week's edition of Living from the Inside Out. I hope to get back. I hope you'll come back next week and join again. Have a great week.
Thank you for joining us at Living from the Inside Out. Listen every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. To connect with Holly, just go to www.globalvoiceradio.com. Global Voice Radio is where your voice and your message is heard.